It's a new day on Deep Space Nine, and a big one for both Sisko and Jake, as the latter is moving out. Okay, he'll still be on the station, but quarters of his own are a big step, even if he will be sharing them with Eggnog, who's popping back here for a while. The return of Eggnog is good news for Rom, the underappreciated brother. He's been off at the academy for about a year now after all, and even Quark has brought a little something to greet him. He bills Rom for them, of course, but that's to be expected. What's not expected is the arrival of Odo. He's come to take Quark before a jury and is enjoying every second of springing the news. Even better, he'll have 8 glorious days of gloating about it on the way to the event. Quark doesn't seem particularly bothered by the whole thing, though that might be part of their little game. Needling each other is another part, though Odo refusing to tell Quark what he's supposed to have done feels like overstepping the mark, even if he does say it's confidential. We'll leave them to it and welcome Eggnog back to the station. The second year of Starfleet Academy involves field studies, which is to say, sending the little bastards off to be somebody else's problem. Perhaps the purpose is also to grind off some of the sharp edges that a year of formal training has given them, ones that make Eggnog use the word sir no fewer than 10 times with Sisko. He's not quite as stiff with Jake when they move in, but he's far from the Eggnog of a year ago. A cleaning regime is his first concern, and planning gym visits for them both in the early hours of the morning. Jake does not seem entirely convinced. To the Mega Shuttle once more, and Odo is getting on Quark's tits. They've been together for 4 days now, and minor things are starting to annoy him, like the buzzing sound he can hear. Odo doesn't hear it until it changes pitch and gets louder, which is enough for both of them to decide they want to look. The good news is we find the source. The bad news is it's a bomb. This is the future, though, so we can just teleport it away. Well, sort of. It takes offense at the attempt and partly kabooms mid-teleport, which does all kinds of bad shit to the Mega Shuttle. Luck's on our side, though, as we're near a habitable planet, which is statistically improbable, as space is appropriately named, but let's ignore that for now. Odo vows vengeance on whoever planted the bomb, only for Quark to say he should keep clear of the Orion Syndicate, which is basically the space mafia. This is news to Odo. He'd kept quiet about the reason Quark was being taken to a grand jury purely because he didn't know it, and hoped that pretending he did would make Quark say something. Comments about what he'd have done if he'd known will have to wait, as right now we're too busy crashing into a planet. We're down in one piece at least, though it's a piece that no longer works properly. Things being kaput means calling for help is out of the question, but of slightly more urgency, the replicator's buggered and the local flora is toxic. We've got emergency rations though. Specifically, we've got 2 packs of emergency rations, 'cause the rest got blown up a bit. Oh, and this planet has sub-zero temperatures too, so that's a problem. Let's give them space to think and check on Jake and Eggnog. Things are a little bit patchy after a few days in the same quarters. Eggnog's not impressed with Jake's idea of an appropriate time to wake up, and Jake's equally frustrated that Eggnog fiddled with his stories when he found them lying around. Living together is not quite the same as spending recreation time together, it seems. Back on planet Snowball, Quark's solving the Mega Shuttle's phone problem. Well, sort of. The thing itself is working apparently, it just can't make a very strong signal. Getting through a planet's atmosphere is too much, but less atmosphere means less interference. That's why he wants to climb a mountain. Perhaps he saw the asphalt in the lower left-hand corner of this picture and assumed the road would go all the way up. Preparation is key to climbing a mountain, so it's lucky we have thermal gear. It's somewhat less lucky that we only have one set, but that means both of them will only half freeze to death when they lug the transmitter to the summit. To DS9 once more, where tempers are boiling over. Eggnog returns home from working with O'Brien to discover the quarters he left clean are now covered in shite. Jake doesn't see the fuss and wants to work on a story instead, or at least play games to help him think about it. For his part, Jake's had it with Eggnog giving orders. He didn't sign up for anything, so why should he be held to the same standards? The argument turns to insults, and Eggnog decides maybe he doesn't want a roommate after all, and leaves. Back on planet Snowball, things are equally dire. They've been at it for 3 days now, and Quark's starting to imagine insects to eat. Not to worry, as Odo thinks we're now near our goal, claiming the next ridge will reveal they only have a few hours of climbing left. Or not, as the ridge shows those hours are going to be days. We're still walking, and we're still bickering. It's Odo that brings up the jury they're going to see so he can throw it at Quark, though the result isn't quite what he expected. Quark points out they tried to murderize him, something they don't do to their own. He wasn't being charged, he was a witness. Even pointing out that Quark wasn't a member purely because he's too insignificant backfires, as that means Odo's been chasing a petty hustler for a decade. Arguments of the topic back on Deep Space Nine, where Rom, the underappreciated brother, speaks to Sisko. Eggnog has moved back in with him, and Rom is hating it. The son he knew is gone, replaced by someone who insists everything be orderly. Sisko thinks it's just a phase caused by the Academy, a polar opposite of the one Jake's going through. They agree that a melding of the two would benefit both, and start to plot and plan. We'll wish them luck and return to planet Snowball, where Odo wakes to a dead Quark. Not really, of course, as he eventually wakes up, though things are getting serious as he's lost the hearing in one of his ears. Odo tries to placate Quark by handing over the last of his emergency ration, and off we go again. The next bout of sniping goes into full argument territory, both blaming the other for their current predicament. It gets a bit handsy, and they have an angry cuddle before rolling down a bit of mountain, the result of which is Odo gaining a new leg joint that he didn't want. Quark splints the leg and makes a frame to drag Odo. For his part, Odo thinks Quark should go on without him, but Quark insists and says that if Odo dies, he'll make a valuable source of food. After an indeterminate amount of time and significant exertion on the part of Quark, he decides to give up and die instead. Odo telling him that the others wouldn't give up doesn't spur Quark, and nor does Odo making a futile gesture to continue alone by dragging himself and pushing the transmitter. What does work is realizing Rom, the underappreciated brother, will inherit his bar. Or maybe thinking about Eggnog's corruption under Starfleet, or maybe that his remains will never be sold if he dies here on a big cold rock in space. Whichever it is, he gets up again and, telling Odo not to break his other leg in the meantime, sets off to tackle the last section alone. We're in Jake's new quarters, though they may not remain such for very long. His dad's decided he should start enforcing some station rules, one of which being that quarters this size require at least 2 occupants. Also, there aren't any smaller ones, at least none that haven't had an excuse thought up by now, so he'll have to bunk with someone or move back in with his dad. Sisko doesn't need to use such excuses with Eggnog. Being a senior officer has its perks, and shitting on anybody below you is one of them. In fact, based on the actions of other captains, you could say that what he's doing is quite restrained. A little time to think has calmed both of them down at least, and they try to compromise. That the compromise starts with buggering off to play Domjot probably helps. To planet Snowball one final time, and Odo is recording his will. He doesn't get the chance to finish as he's teleported aboard the Defiant. Quark made it to the summit after all, news received with mixed feelings by Odo as he steels himself for the inevitable. Quark's earned the gloating to be fair, and Odo lets him have his fun with no return needling as they recover in sickbay. Perhaps the gesture was enough to make Quark start up their game again, so we'll leave them to reassure themselves that they absolutely do hate each other honest, until the next adventure. The odd couple go on holiday with predictably disastrous results. We've not had an episode properly dedicated to Odo and Quark before, their interactions always being a sideshow for whatever's going on with them in other stories, so this one's welcome. We've discussed previously how their relationship works. They both have a grudging respect for the skills of the other, a game of move and counter-move played over years that's adversarial, but mostly light-hearted. Neither would really change it if given the choice, their endless sparring more to do with the pretense than anything else. Both are fully aware that any replacement could be far worse. That changes a little here when they come to blows. Look at it deeper, however, and you'll see that it's not each other they hate, but their own situations. Quark couldn't afford to become a member of the Orion Syndicate. That's not because he's insufficiently devious to have made the money, but because he's not enough of a bastard. We've spoken before about Quark's morals and how it's a mistake to believe he doesn't have any. His rules are very strict, more so than other Ferengi in fact. He wants to play the same game but can't bring himself to be as heartless about it as others, which means he's basically playing on hard mode. He still managed to do all right for himself despite the self-imposed limits, until Brunt came along and kicked over his sand castle for not playing things their way. Quark tried to be better, and life pissed on him for it. Odo's been watching Quark for years because finding order in chaos is what he needs. He could have solved the problem a decade back by making Quark have an accident, removing any affront to order at the source, but unlike the Founders, he refuses to consider himself as being above others in the pursuit of his goal. His rules are very strict, more so than other changelings in fact. He wants to play the same game but can't bring himself to be as heartless about it as others, which means he's basically playing on hard mode. He still managed to do all right for himself despite the self-imposed limits, until Odetta came along and kicked over his sandcastle for not playing things their way. Odo tried to be better, and life pissed on him for it. When the two come to blows in this episode, it's not about hating the other. It's about seeing their own injustices mirrored. If we're being picky, there are a couple of small elephants in the setup of this story. As this is all for a Federation grand jury, as we're told, why is an official working for Bajor being asked to bring Quark? He might be the station's security chief, but unless whatever Quark's testifying about happened here, it's not Odo's jurisdiction or his job. Deep Space Nine is not a Federation outpost. We can possibly explain that away as extending an olive branch towards Odo after the disastrous Eddington business. The guy you sent as someone's replacement turning out to be a plant has got to be a source of some red faces. There's also the chance that Odo's time on Earth, helping to protect against the Founders last year, left an impact. That he also prevented a coup while he was here probably looks pretty strong on his CV as well. The other potential problem is Odo not being made aware of the reason for Quark being summoned. Not letting whoever's transporting a witness know about the danger is a pretty serious oversight, but this too can be headcanoned away. There's a chance whoever ordered it thought they were being stealthy by saying nothing. It's also possible that whoever gave the order was on the take, or possibly coerced, and it was deliberately vague to make an attempt on Quark's life easier. That's assuming the original message wasn't intercepted in the first place, of course. There's a chance it was replaced by somebody on the Space Mafia's payroll. Incidentally, for those of you thinking there's a third small elephant here in the form of travel time for the rescue, I already ran the numbers. The Mega Shuttle crashed after 4 days of flight, which sounds like a long time to wait. The top speed of a Mega Shuttle is warp 5 though, whereas the Defiant sits somewhere a little over 9. There's some debate about the actual number, but even at just 9 it would take only half a day to cover the same distance. I suppose you could ask why they didn't use the Defiant in the first place when it would only have been a 2-day round trip, but things are still iffy at the station. We even had Sisko order that it remain there while he went off in a Mega Shuttle at the start of the season, so we've set a precedent, even if the Klingon stuff has died down a bit since. It's also possible the idea was suggested, and Odo turned it down so he could spend 8 days trying to get data out of Quark. Regardless, there are plenty of explanations for the questions above, and none of it detracts from the episode. Neither does the Jake and Eggnog plot, though I don't personally think it adds much either. There's probably a moral in there somewhere about living with someone being very different to having fun with someone, but whatever. The main attraction here is Armin Shimmerman and René Auberjonois going at it. If you're watching for action, then this one probably won't be for you, but if you're here for the characters like me, then this one's important in understanding Odo and Quark, both separately and together. End of episode.
It stands to reason, if the thing crashes every time I touch it, I just shouldn't touch it.
Not to rain on your parade, but how do you intend to use it without touching?
Voice recognition software.
Did they do that back then?
Absolutely. It wasn't as sophisticated as we're used to, obviously, but it should work.
After 312 reinstalls, I'm willing to give it a go. That product key's burned itself into my brain.
Well, we won't have to worry about that anymore. This is going to work. I can feel it in my bones.
All right then, son. Show me what you've got.
Computer, go to GeoCity.
Why does the screen say goat poo big old titties?
Wait, what? That's not what I said.
I hope he's censoring this,
Why?
'cause I've just figured out what's coming next. Oh, Jesus.